The FCC proposes to reinstate amateur radio service fees. Let's talk about that.
Shut up and sit down.
Thank you for joining the channel. My name is Jason. I'm KC5HWB, and on this video series, we do reviews, news, and how-tos of many things that are new in amateur radio. This proposal from the FCC is brand new. It came out 2 days before this episode was recorded. Now, it's going to post later, but we're going to get together with some people from around the USA and outside of the USA, from New Zealand, Australia, and England. And we're going to talk about FCC's amateur radio licensing. This is the next episode of the YouTubers bunch. Stay tuned. It's going to be a fun ride. Okay, so we've got 12 of us here tonight and 2 or 3 new people tonight. And we're going to talk about the most recent proposal by the FCC, which at the time of this recording, this is just a proposal. It says FCC proposes to reinstate amateur radio service fees. So we'll go through that here in just a second, but I want to take a moment to introduce everybody. We've got, and this is just the order of the screen again. We got Steve, K5ATA, Good Game Ham Radio. Cheers to you, sir. Got Jason, KM4ACK. Callum, the DX Commander. Sterling, N0 SSC.
Hey.
Craig, WJ6F. I'm still going to say that wrong. I still want to say W6, Craig. So I'm glad you guys switched places, though, because now it's a little bit different than it was a minute ago. I guess Mike dropped and rejoined or something. So, or at least on my screen is different. Jason, Ham Radio Ham Radio TV, KM6FAK. Thanks for joining us. We got Adam, K6ARK.
Cheers.
Kevin, W6RIP.
Everyone.
Rolly, tell me your call sign again. I know it's ZL something.
ZL1 Bravo Quebec Delta, or so you can understand it in American, ZL1 BQD.
ZL1 BQD. All right, thanks for joining us, man. Okay, Hayden from Ham Radio DX. Tell me your call sign too. I can't remember.
K7HH.
VK788. Okay. Okay. Thanks for being here. And I'm looking forward to what you have to say, because you and I traded some texts about this earlier. And then Mike K at MRD Radio Stuff. Welcome, guys. Appreciate y'all being here tonight, everybody. So, okay, so the big news of the day in the USA is that the FCC's proposed fee structure is going to kill new people getting into ham radio. We'll talk about that in a second. Steve, I'll be interested in your perspective on that, given what you do for a living. But Hayden and I were trading private messages back and forth in Discord earlier this week, and he was telling me about everything you had to go through to get a license in Australia, and I was like, wow, that is convoluted and expensive from what he was telling me. So Hayden, if you don't mind starting us off, I'd like to know what it takes to get a license for a new person and what it takes to upgrade. And I don't know how many classes you guys have over there, but what it takes to upgrade once you have a license. So please go ahead.
Well, I'll share my screen.
Go ahead, yeah.
And so in Australia, we have 3 license classes now, and it starts off with the foundation license. Then we have the standard license, and then the advanced license. So that's pretty simple. Foundation just covers 10 watts, pretty much most of the common HF bands, 80, 40, and then VHF, UHF. I thought the first step that people usually go to when they're studying for the foundation license is they go to the foundation manual, which they don't have to do, but this comes from the Wireless Institute of Australia, which is the ARRL equivalent here in Australia. Now, this manual is 34.50, so I've run a little bit of a tally up here, so I do know how much minimum it costs for a license here. So say you buy this manual and you study it, then you move on to the exam. Now the exams are done by a place called the Australian Maritime College, and they do the administrative portions of the exams. So the exams are actually carried out by invigilators, so the exams are done by amateurs, usually, around the country on a volunteer basis. So to do any exam, so there's Foundation, Standard, Advanced, it's $90 Australian. Now, you don't have to pay, there's two components. There's a theory exam and a practical exam. Now, if you do the theory and the practical on the same day, you don't need to pay for the practical portion of it. So that part is free, but it is there for just in case you do it on a different day. One thing that I did realise after we spoke was I think that the regulations. So there's two theories. There's the theory for just basic electronic theory and radio theory. Then there's regulations, so how to operate in Australia, and then there's the practical assessment. So I have to check, but I'm pretty sure that there's there's two lots of cost here. So there's $90 for regulations, and then there's $90 for $90 for the theory. So I think that's $180 just for that. Once you've done that and you pass, so if you don't pass, you have to pay again. You don't get it for free. And unlike the United States, I believe that if you pass a lower license class, then you get the next one free. You can sit at the same day, can't you? And you get that for free.
It depends on the VEC, but yes, generally so.
Yeah, okay. So I believe that that's not the case here in Australia. You have to pay for another exam to go to the next step up, even if it was on the same day. Then once you've done that, there's this convoluted call sign recommendation, which come out due to apparently a lack of call signs in some areas, which required processing. So the cheapest option is that you can ask for a call sign and they'll just give you the next available one that pops up in the list. So it could be completely random. You'll notice in my call sign, mine's got my initials in it, HH. So I picked my call sign. So to do that, you'd have to pay a higher fee. Once you've done that, and you've passed your exam and you've got a call sign, then you go to the FCC equivalent, which is the Australian Communications and Media Authority, who actually issue your license, and you have to pay $55 for your license, and that's per year. But if you have a look here, you'll see that the tax is $51, and the actual charge for the license is only $4. So they tax you 10 times more than what the actual charge of the license is. So I think the tally was something like over $300, I think.
Wow.
So, and there's no concession for students. There's no concession for, age concession to get younger people interested. It's really crazy, to be quite honest. When I got my license, which was 16 years ago, I think it cost me a total of about $80. So it's really gone up.
So it's really gone up. Now, how much of that? Well, first of all, how long does a license last? And second of all, how much of that is an annual fee rather than a one-time charge?
So the exams, all the fees on the screen are a one-time charge.
Okay.
So for instance, I've got an advanced license, so I don't need to upgrade anymore.
Yeah.
I've got the highest license class, so all I pay per year is $55 per license that I hold. I actually hold 4 licenses for amateur repeaters as well.
You said per year?
$55 per year.
Jeez, that's like a ARL subscription.
Yeah. Yeah, except we don't have to. You don't have to do that to retain your license. Yeah, and Hayden, talk about the repeater license. You got to pay another fee for that, right?
Well, I was going to say too. You mentioned about how long for. So that's $55 per year. You can pay 5 years. I think you can pay 10 years. I think if your license expires, and they've been a little bit slack, the Australian Communications and Media Authority, in the past with notifying you that your license is about to expire. It's usually up to you to see when it expires. If your license expires, they won't give you any concession for that. You need to go through and prove that you've passed the exam. And if you've lost your exam papers, you've got to do it all again. And you can lose your call sign. Someone else can snap up your call sign. But you mentioned repeaters. Yeah, so for an amateur repeater, it's the same thing. You don't have to do any of these examination fees, but you do have to pay for a call sign recommendation, which I think is $30 down here for a repeater. And then you have to pay $55 a year for that. So I pay over $220 a year in licensing.
Wow.
For 4 licenses.
That's crazy. It makes the current FCC proposal not seem so bad.
But I'm all for keeping these fees as low as possible. And it's not about having to pay lots of money. It's about the person who's just starting in ham radio.
Right.
Because they look at these fees, and I was on a Zoom call the other day, and there was this 12-year-old kid who was interested in studying for his license. And we had to go through all these things about how much it was going to cost him. I mean, he's only 12. He wouldn't earn $180 or $200 in pocket money in probably a year. So
right.
How's he supposed to, afford this, though? And then that's even before he's got a radio or anything.
Right. Wow. Okay. Sheesh. That's okay. So I messed up a little bit. Hayden, I really wanted you to tell that, but I told Callum he could go first because he needs to drop off because it's really late at night for him. So thank you for sharing that. We're going to have a discussion here in a minute, but Callum, you go ahead and share what does it take to get a new license and to get an upgrade over in where you are in the UK.
Okay. So very interesting to hear what happens in VK land. Although I'm a bit of a kind of a capitalist, I always get the impression that if you pay your money for something, you probably get a better service. Anyway.
Yeah.
In the UK, you buy a book, £5, $7 or something. You study. And then at the moment, we're doing this online invigilation. So similar to, I think New Zealand, I don't know actually, certainly Australia, we got the foundation license, okay? And then you can, and that's £27. And that's it. The license itself is completely free. And then there's an upgrade from 10 watts to 50 watts called intermediate. And then from 50 to 400 watts is the full. Now, the problem, and what I was going to throw into the mix here for you guys to discuss later, is that there's no charge for our license anymore. There used to be. But because of that, no one cares. Right? So if there's someone QRMing me, if there's pirates, no one cares anymore. So as a community, we're completely self-policing. And that, if you've listened to my live streams, has been a bit of a problem. Because even if we track down the perpetrator, no one cares, all right? And that's the RSGB, right? Our body, and our government body, which is Ofcom. So I'm actually in favour of paying £100 a year, or whatever it is, to put some men back in vans, tracking things down, measuring stuff, spot checking my station, whatever it needs to be. So to clean it all up, that's what I say. Because if it's free, if you don't pay enough, there's not enough resources to be paid for to buy for the little man and the PA, the secretarial support, the administrative support, and the computers and the office and the HR and the manager and everything that goes to creating a small department to make sure that the amateur radio folks, because in the US I know that there's people who actually get fines. Nobody gets a fine in the UK. They don't care any longer. So that's it. It's quite simple in the UK. It costs you nothing once you bought it. I'll go back to Newt.
Well, that's a different perspective, and that's a different perspective. And I know you've been having some trouble with that QRM, and yeah, somebody got fined just like a year ago or something like that out here in Louisiana for doing QRM stuff. I don't know how I don't know how much they follow up and make you actually pay that, but they did get fined. I don't know what happens after the fine is issued. But that's an
Well,
interesting perspective.
yeah.
I hadn't thought about it from that direction.
Somebody actually put a bit of effort in to work out that it was Joe over here, you see. But in our country, nobody cares. That's the point.
Huh.
Because we're not paying anything.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
Anyway, I'll listen for a bit. Good discussion.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Callum. Appreciate. Yeah, just feel free to drop whenever you're ready. So thanks for being here tonight.
I'll say cheerio now, and I'll drop in the next 10 minutes or so. But I'm finding this very interesting conversation.
Okay. Awesome. All right, Rolly, let's hear from you if you don't mind. Tell us about New Zealand, and then after that, we're just gonna have a free-for-all with what everybody thinks about this news. In fact, after Rolly talks, I'll read the first paragraph or so of this new proposal, and then we can have a free-for-all from there. So, Rolly, please go ahead.
Yeah, right. Good morning, guys. Again from New Zealand. Thanks for having me on. New Zealand has changed quite dramatically from when I first got an amateur radio license. When I first got a license 50 years ago, we had 3 licenses. There was your beginner's license, which allowed you on basically VHF, UHF channels. Then you had to do a Morse requirement of, I think it was 10 words per minute, which gave you a limited license, and then you had to go and sit another license yet again with a higher Morse requirement, and that gave you a full license. And there was a practical component in those days. That got all thrown out a number of years ago, and now we only have one license covers the whole lot. So you just do one exam, and that does the lot. You go to an authorized examining agent. For instance, I could qualify to be an examiner if I wanted to be, but I choose not to be, thanks. And most of that is administered through the clubs here in New Zealand. There is a fee which the clubs can charge whatever they want, really. Most of them, I noticed, are charging around about $30 to $50 New Zealand, $20, $25 US type thing. From there on, then there's a one-off. No, there is no one-off fee now at all. The license is absolutely free, and so go for it. And yeah, there's been a lot of backflack from that. There's those that go, yeah, great, the license is free, doesn't cost me anything to get a license. The problem is with that, I have to agree with Callum, there is a little bit of now, well, free for all. Not too bad here in New Zealand. The authorities do work on we're not going to come and check you, but if we get a complaint, then we have the right to come and check you then. Whether that's done or not, I'm not too sure. I haven't heard any, haven't been involved in much of that at all. So for New Zealand, it's very easy. If you want to come to New Zealand and get a reciprocal license, yes, you can bring your US license with you, and that you'll get a reciprocal license. Now, if you happen to be, say, from UK with an M call, you've only just got your call last week, you can come down here to New Zealand with your M call, and they'll give you a full license. So you're
well, even with the baby, even with the foundation license, Rolly.
Yeah, you can take a foundation license here in New Zealand
and get a full ZL.
With a reciprocal. I'm not sure whether you can take now that full reciprocal license back to the UK with you and get a full license. Might be a cheap way of doing it. Well, not a cheap way. One way of doing it.
Have to fly from one country to the other, but yeah, a cheap way to do it.
Now, my experience, I can give you a bit more experience from the expeditions I do around the Pacific. Every one of them are different. So the secret is you got to have your home call sign certificate with you. Some places, for instance, when I was in Timor-Leste, they wanted to actually inspect the equipment that you had. So you had to take the equipment back into the office with you as well. and show them that you could actually operate your equipment. So with a little Alicraft KX3, it was real easy. In fact, their engineers were more than interested in seeing what that was all about than giving me a license. There have been some Pacific nations, because I deal with their government departments on a professional basis, I've actually had to teach them how to issue amateur radio licenses and given them a practical demonstration of issuing my license first. So there it is. But and most of the Pacific nations will charge you a one-off fee, the equivalent of around about $10–15 US as a one-off fee that'll give you that license for 1 year. Come back in another year, pay another license fee, and away you go again. So that's basically what it is from New Zealand and the greater Pacific area, in my experience.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it sounds like Australia is kind of in a boat of their own with all their fees. But I was wondering if New Zealand, since you guys were right next to them, I was wondering if New Zealand was aligned that same way. But it sounds like you guys are much closer to the UK.
Australia is the West Island of New Zealand. Didn't you know that?
Yeah.
We're bigger.
All right, let me read this. I'm going to read like the first paragraph here. So this was press release. This is just the ARRL's website. You can find it multiple places. I've seen it posted on QRZ 2 or 3 places. So on August 28th, amateur radio licenses would pay a $50 fee for each amateur radio license application if the FCC adopts rules it proposed this week, including in the fees are applications for new licenses, renewals, and upgrades to existing licenses and vanity call sign requests. Excluded are applications for administrative updates such as changes in address, annual regulatory fees. So that's good news, I guess. FCC proposal is contained in the NPRM, the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, in MD, I assume that means Maryland, docket 20-270, which is updated to implement portions of the Repack Airways Yield Better Access for Users of Modern Services Act of 2018, the so-called RABOMS Act, which I remember reading about that a little bit in the past, but I don't know much about it. The act requires that the FCC switch from a congressionally mandated fee structure to a cost-based system of assessment. In the NPRM, the FCC proposed application fees for a broad range of services that use the FCC's ULS, including the amateur radio service that has been excluded by an earlier statute. The 2018 statute excludes amateur radio from the annual regulatory fees, but not from application fees. So it goes on to say, now I read this shortly before we started recording today. Basically, it would be a $50 fee to get your license, which, again, this is just a proposal. They don't have all the details hammered out yet, but it would be a $50 fee to renew your license at the end of 10 years. There's nothing in that statement about shortening the license or expanding the license or anything like that. So it'd be, instead of what you pay right now is about $14 to take a test. Some places actually give the test for free. I think it's GLARG. Sterling, you probably know this better than I do.
Yeah, a couple do. GLARG does not. They do charge for exams,
GLARG,
but Laurel,
that's who it is.
and
Okay.
a few others out there do.
Okay.
GLARG is actually free for kids. So,
Well, yeah,
GLARG is
there's
free
a lot
for-
to do,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
concessions and things like
because
that.
they
So-
stepped up and helped me out with my stuff. When
Okay.
Corona hit and Laurel couldn't do it anymore.
Okay. So yeah, W5YI is primarily who we use around here, although we've had some ARRL as well, and both of those charge $14. And that's just for administration. You know, they say, oh, well, the VEs get that. I can guarantee you, I'm the treasurer of my ham club at Hearst Amateur Radio Club, and I see all the fees that come in and go out, and we test all that. Well, we used to test all the time, every week. If someone wanted to test, we'd set up one day a week to give tests before COVID hit. No fees are collected by are retained by RVEs. We hand all those fees off to W5YI. So those are all W5YI or ARRL, depending on which one we use. But I know that some VECs don't charge a fee. And there's no, I guess if that VEC, if that fee is retained by the VEC, then currently the FCC license is free. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all of my kids who tested last year tested. completely free. The club that sponsors the Laurel VE team picks up any administrative costs for supplies and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. So what? So you've heard how crazy it is in Australia, and you've heard that New Zealand and the UK are basically the same. And I'm kind of, now that I've heard Callum's perspective on it, I'm kind of in agreement with him. I mean, because we don't want amateur radio in the USA to turn into GMRS, just pay $80 for a 10-year license and forget about it, right? They're not talking about doing away with the exam or anything like that. They're just talking about charging a fee that didn't exist before. So, open floor. What do you guys think?
Can I make a comment on what Callum said earlier as well?
No, go ahead.
I think what Callum said is a very valid point. In my experience in Australia, because everything's all tied to the government, it's all government agencies running this now, with apart from the exams, of course. But the fees that we pay for exams, for instance, I mean, our VE, they don't get paid for that. So they're just the company that's now doing the exams. They're getting all of that. As far as the $50 a year, I don't mind paying that per year to keep our license, because that's what we get. We get protection in some regards. We've got someone that we can call and we can complain about. Whether they actually do something about it is another matter. Sometimes they're a bit slack and they don't. That was going to be my question. There have been places times where they have acted and they have charged or fined someone for that. But I don't mind paying that. I think it's just the entry level fees which are the problem. I mean, like you guys, like $14 or in like maximum, that'd be a dream here. So that was just a comment I was going to make about that. Callum's got a very valid point with that if you do pay per year for a government agency to actually act for you, then that's fair.
Yeah, you were right though, Hayden. Getting into it in VK land sounds friggin' expensive. Yeah, and it's a shame there's no dispensation for the young people.
Well, our numbers are dropping, so what are we supposed to do? People don't want to pay this.
Yeah, there was only 187 new French amateur radio operators last year because the bar is so high, and it's the one gulp in. And Gilles from Radio Preppers was explaining that to me.
Is that okay? I'm not familiar with that at all. So is that due to fees, or is that due because the test is incredibly difficult?
It's full on electronics.
I
mean, the only person that could pass the French test around here is probably Rowley.
That's good to know. Okay then. So, well, I mean, I think my opinion is this: there needs to be concessions made for young people, and this is coming from the FCC. This is not coming from the ARRL. I traded a couple of emails with my division manager, and I asked if I could quote him, and he's like, "Let's talk first." I said, "Okay." In a nutshell, he says that the league is not happy about it. Okay, I'll just say that. I don't have much more details than that anyway, but the league is not happy about it. The ARRL is not happy about it. So they are fighting against the FCC, who has made this proposal. Right now, it's just a proposal. If y'all will remember, folks in the USA remember the whole, the word just escaped me, the whole act about Amateur Radio Parity Act, or whatever it was called, to keep HOAs from telling us no, they can't put up antennas, whatever that was called. Yeah. That was also a proposal. And it never went through the way they wanted it to go through. So there's nothing that's actually been approved or sanctioned yet, as it were. But I think that going from $0 to $50 is extreme. But I also want to just keep it in perspective that folks outside of the USA might or might not have it a lot worse than that. So let's just keep everything in perspective is all I would say. So, but again, I don't want to talk the whole time. Free for all. You guys go ahead.
I had two thoughts. Thank you. I had two thoughts right away when I heard this. Absolutely, I thought about the young person or the person of any age that's interested, and I can remember it was just 2016 for me. It was a lot to figure out and handle, and two of the biggest obstacles were, where do you go take the test, and the time you allot yourself to study. Now, the $15, that was a bonus. I was like, oh, that's nothing. That's okay, perfect. So I get the idea of we're getting, times of going on. I try to look up when the $15 came about. I'd love to figure that out, when we changed it from before. But here's my thought. Tech should only be paid for brand new tech. It should be raised to $25 because everything is more expensive. I get it, inflation, all that jazz. And the test should be available online. That would allow more people, and I know it is because of the pandemic and everything else, but $25 for a tech, give it a nice online standard test across the board, and then every 10 years, okay, I could see a general or an excerpt be $50, but exactly to Cal's point and everyone else's point, I want some of these alpha hotels taken care of. Because I'm sorry, the FCC does squat. Right. I'm in California. We have, I think, the most hams in the U.S., and we have repeaters full of clowns, of guys hitting the siren button on a Bofang and driving around. I mean, this is going on currently. We're actually sharpening our DF skills. We're working with a whole bunch of people, including the ARL, about this. But I mean, even if we give addresses and all that, we're talking to a wall as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, so I think something needs to change, and I get it. We need a little bit money, so we should be able to see some more action. I also just wanted to share. Let me see how fast I can do this. I think I love numbers, so to speak. I'm going to share you guys and then drop it down here. Okay. So are you seeing this chart?
Yes.
So check out this chart. I think the history is only as good back in 2018. There is a dip, and if everyone remembers, this is before me, but the code was here in 2017. It dipped down, and then they took away the code, and they kept it $15. And if you look where we are, we're climbing gangbusters.
Yes.
As far as licenses in the U.S., which is extremely excited. And I'm guessing a bean counter saw this and said, "Ooh, wait a minute, we need a little bit more money."
I should clarify that code you're showing there is actually when they took away all the code, because they took away that they introduced the very first no-code technician license. I think it was 90 or 91. So in 2006 is when they took away the code for the general and the extra. But yes, I've seen studies like that before that show when they took away the code, the number of licenses has gone up dramatically, and the number of people learning CW is also going up.
Yeah.
So it's not required anymore. It's like, oh, it's not required. Let's learn it. Go figure.
They should definitely take in consideration to new and youth.
Yeah.
And not just do a knee jerk and see they're being lazy. It's much easier to make it a standard fee across the board. I get it. To segment that to a different cost bracket, you're gonna have to put your pants on and go to work.
Right. Well, I can tell you right now, if I'm paying $50 for a license, then yeah, I'm going to expect the FCC to step up and start doing some of the crap that they should already be doing.
Yeah. Therein lies I don't have faith they're going to pack the vans full of DF equipment.
There's nothing in this proposed rulemaking that says anything about how they're going to use funds to improve
get raises,
our situation.
Right. That's my biggest worry there, because yes, enforcement will be great, but I'm doing some on the napkin calculations, and for new licenses only, there's about, using AH0A statistics, there's about 500 to 1,000 new licenses every month. And that doesn't, if that's $50 a year, that doesn't really correspond to much revenue. But on the other hand, you have 760-ish thousand licenses in America, and that's every 10 years we have to renew. That's 76,000 times 50, that's $3.8 million. So that's a pretty big chunk of change for some real enforcement, like a couple of vans and some actual stuff. But what we don't see in the Ray-Bombs Act or this proposal is any change in what they're going to do. It's just the way they wanted to make the fee schedule simpler, because it's kind of piecemeal and patchwork. And they were like, all right, this is too much bureaucracy, and so they kind of, I don't know how to say simplify, because it doesn't seem very simple, because everyone is going through different fee changes. But it does something to that degree just to make the paperwork a little less strenuous. But yeah, there's nothing that says enforcement will improve or their revenues will increase, because some are going up, some are coming down. There's not really a clear picture of like what's this for besides just kind of cleaning up.
Right.
Yeah, and there's no consideration.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was gonna say it kind of just seems more like a money grab from the FCC.
Yeah.
Because our spectrum space is quite valuable, and there's companies that want it. So I would imagine the FCC is clearly, doesn't care about us really, but they care about the money and how much are they losing by not selling our spectrum. They've done it before, and they're always looking to see where they can make a buck. I don't think you're going to see any more enforcement. Guys do get fined. You read about it.
Yeah.
But even if they're making millions of dollars a year, I don't see Scooby vans with antennas and direction finding and stuff going out to find the guy that's kerchunking your repeater all day long. And that's the unfortunate thing. If the funds were going towards that and were going to help make our hobby better, I would have no problem with it. But this is the American government, and look at how it's run, and it's all greed. That's all it is.
And I would have no problem paying for me to pay, every 10 years or whatever. My problem is, I teach kids to get their license, and when you start asking a kid to come up with $50, in fact, I'm in kind of a argument with somebody on YouTube comments right now because I posted this in my communities tab there, and they're like, well, it's $5 a year. Well, no, it's not $5 a year to a 12-year-old because they don't get to pay it out $5 a year.
Right.
They've got to come up with $50, and I encourage my guys and girls to upgrade. I don't want them to stop at technician. I want them to get those HF privileges. So now all of a sudden we're at $100.
Now it's $100.
And I teach in a rural school district where it's not like when I was a kid, if I wanted to earn money, I pushed my dad's lawnmower around the neighborhood, knocked on doors. It can be a mile for some of these kids to the next neighbor.
Right.
Am I going to say, yeah, go push your mower around and try to come up with some cash? And, it's kind of, I wrote that blog article today, and I was more just venting, I guess, than anything. Because, if I had to charge or tell these kids it was going to cost them $50 to get this license, instead of 26 kids getting their license last year, I might have had 3. Right. And in the long run, that's hurting the hobby. It's decreasing our numbers. So
seems like it needs to be not a blanket fee structure. Just say $50 for everybody. No, maybe like what Jason was saying. Maybe a smaller price for technician. Maybe a free price for people under a certain age. Something like that might be a little bit more ability to swallow might be a little bit there. Right. I think that. Was it Kevin or was it Adam that had something?
Yeah, so a couple things. The one thing I would emphasize is that, the benefits of the amateur radio service are really intangible and not quantifiable very easily as they relate to just the overall benefit from a STEM education perspective, especially for kids. The other thing I would just mention is that in California and a lot of states, you have, other hobbies, fishing, hunting, so on and so forth, where you have either free or reduced fee licenses for kids, people under 16 years of age or 18 years of age. They get free licenses, and something like that would be, I think, if this added fee is really necessary, that would be a way to make it useful and effective to not just push people out of the hobby.
Agreed.
I want to just make a comment about one. Sorry, Jason.
If I may, real quick. I used to work I'm down here in Southern California. I used to work for San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station. And we dealt with the NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The way they get their money is through licensing fees of the commercial entities. We got stations out here like KLOS, 95.5, KFI, Clear Channel stations. Charge them a little more. If NRC needed more money, the only way they were allowed to get it, they had to go find somebody. They had to go find the violations, be it a doctor's office who's leaking radiation, a dentist who's over-zapping his patient. As Mike said, get the little stupid Scooby vans, Get off your lazy butt, get out of your air-conditioned office in DC and start tootling around, because down here in Orange County, we have some repeaters are dead, and I have some repeaters, I live in fear of my kids hearing, because there's more cursing there than in a Joe Pesci movie.
Yeah.
It's gotten bad. I mean, you got repeaters like Claret, they're dead. And then they have these ones at the FCC, like, oh, just stay over there and curse all you want. And that's not what the hobby's about. Some new person finds that, they're going to be like, I paid $15 for this. So I think if they want more money, go find somebody.
Good night, Rolly. Thanks for joining tonight, buddy. Y'all have a good night. Okay, go ahead, Craig. I'm sorry.
No, what I was saying is, if the FCC wants more money, they should take a page out of the NRC reg book and go find somebody. Go send somebody to prison for interfering with the Coast Guard mission. Do something. I mean,
that's a good point.
Go after some of these CB. I used to drive a truck cross country. Yes, I had a kicker, 300 watt. It was illegal. Go nail some of those guys.
I know a few guys back in my day before amateur radio. I know a few guys who did get fined for that. So, but there's no, but there's no follow. Like, you get a fine in the mail. Okay, good. There's no follow. If there's no follow up, that's not really a fine. So yeah. So this, I mean, these there's plenty of, yeah. I know that repeater. Jason, you're in Northern California,
right?
But so how close are you to LA?
8 hours, 7 hours.
Okay, so you're not close at all. So there's a repeater out there. When I was out there visiting Josh last November, there's a repeater out there that fits the description of what you were saying, and I'm like, dude.
The Renegade repeater.
Yeah, I'm like, holy cow, man! All they got to do is come out here and sit in a van for like a day, and they could have thousands of dollars of fees, of fines and fees from all these bozos talking on this repeater here.
Yeah, because they're dumb enough to identify themselves.
Me and Adam know that repeater.
Are they identifying themselves?
No.
I think
sometimes.
I think Scar and Scrap out there are the two biggies.
We've got a sister repeater to that up here in Northern California, and for fun, I stream it on Broadcastify. K6POU.
Oh, wow.
But you guys got to understand that that's peanuts. I mean, as far as profit goes, that's really not much. And in reality, like Sterling said, these license fees really aren't that much as far as a government budget goes. For FCC, a few $1 million is not a lot of money.
Well, and I wouldn't have a problem with an additional fee each, 10 years or every year or whatever, but keeping it reasonable for students, making it free, giving them reduced cost. I know here in Tennessee, like someone else was saying, if you want a hunting license and you're under 16, it's a reduced fee for that.
Right.
So sure, or vanity licenses as well. That's another, I think, perfect example of where, it makes sense to charge an extra fee for that, and that could be a source of profit because they're attractive to people, and I like having my vanity license. I would pay for it.
I had a comment, I think, on what Mike said about spectrum. So here in Australia, we're losing spectrum left, right, and centre. They do very little to the FCC equivalent, ACMA in Australia, do very little to save our spectrum. They'd rather sell it off because it's very valuable. So all of that's done by the ARRL equivalent, the WIA here in Australia. So they try and save our spectrum. So even though we pay these fees per year, it doesn't really necessarily mean that they're going to fight for our spectrum and that we can keep that, because it's worth, and it's way more valuable to some other commercial entity to have. And the other question I had was in the US, like, what happens if you have unlicensed guys on the air? Do the FCC care? Do they go and find them? Do they find them and find them? Or
they're supposed to.
They have a citizen, like a volunteer group of people that supposedly finds them, but what happens to them after that is,
you can find them and report them, and the FCC will sometimes send them a fine. Like, they'll send them something in the mail, certified mail, and said, okay, you've been fined, however much money it is for doing this, this, and this. But I don't think there's much follow-up after that. So the person's probably just like throwing it in the trash and forget about it,
We had down here in Southern California, we had a prolific jammer, and not gonna say his name, but he would hit all the local big repeaters in this area. And finally, a couple guys from the repeater owners that I talk, the repeater group that I talk with, they, over months and months and months, and everyone's saying where he's at, what he's doing, he's actually a truck driver, and he's always driving through, so you can never find him. Finally, they were able to get enough information, pinpoint him, corner him at a restaurant, and threaten him to give everybody his personal information if he didn't stop. And haven't heard from him since.
Street justice.
There's a sense of vigilante.
Yeah, a lot of people hated him.
Yeah, street justice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think the FCC really just does enough enforcement to put out a story here and there about, we caught this person doing this thing, and here's what we did. So to try to, I guess, scare people straight. But the message really goes to the choir. They're preaching to the choir on these issues. So totally. I'm not sure how effective it is.
Yeah.
Well, look at all the Bofangs coming in that I'm pretty sure are not the correct parts.
Yeah, those are still illegal.
And what's happening there? I mean, you would think that would be real money, real large Chinese corporations. I don't know. Maybe we're too friendly with the Chinese, and they're like, that's fine.
Yeah, that's another subject that.
This is fixing to turn political.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. This is on my channel. This is on my channel, guys. I'm going to cut it right there. You're not Jason. Jason, you're not wrong. I'll put it that way.
Are you saying you use a Bofang on FRS, Jason?
No, I've actually never done that. But if what I tell people. Now, this might be a little gray area and closer to charcoal than gray. If you're not being a total jackwagon on the airwaves, you're probably not going to have the FCC coming after you. Okay? Now, I'm not condoning that at all. I think that here's what okay. All right, we're going to get a little bit political here for a second, okay? Here's what I liken it to, okay? All of this radio lockdown stuff and all of this regulatory, if you buy a radio, it can't go outside of these certain bands and blah, blah. That's all crap, okay? That is like saying, okay, just because you have a radio that'll go to those frequencies doesn't mean that you are licensed for those frequencies, okay? That is like going and buying a brand new Mustang. I'm a Ford guy, so I'm going to say Mustang, but you could say Porsche or Dodge Challenger or whatever. Okay, you go buy a brand new Mustang and that car has a 140 mile per hour speedometer in it. Okay, so if I have a Bofang in my hand and that'll go up to 480 megahertz and I say, well, the radio will go there, so I must be able to talk there. That's as stupid as saying, well, I've got a Mustang whose speedometer goes to 140 miles an hour, so I must be able to do a $125 down the highway and nobody's going to say anything to me about it, right? I mean, that's the same thing. Just because you have something that'll go to a band or a frequency that you're not allowed to talk on doesn't mean you're allowed to talk there. It's all about licensing. Now, FRS is a different story because that's where it has the restrictions with power and fixed antenna and all that. But I'm talking about like ham radio and GMRS and these things. People need to take individual responsibility for themselves, period. End of story. And if you don't, then you need to be fined for it because this is the current law. And if you don't like the law, then go get it changed because there's ways to do that as well. So that's as political as we're going to get tonight, or well, as I'm going to get tonight. You guys can comment on that if you want to.
Amen.
Agreed. Well, going back to Jason Fiore's comment, it's just like the FCC doesn't like do their enforcement. I mean, right. I think they did try to, or they did put out an article saying like, it's banned, but there was no enforcement. At least we don't know of any, and we obviously don't see any because we can still buy them by the dozen. Right. But that just lends itself to like on the ground, boots on the ground type enforcement. And the way that it all works, and I'll kind of answer this for anybody wondering, is there's a few methods. There's self-policing, like Cal said. We ham self-police. As you've probably heard, we VF, we find, and we submit complaints to the FCC. The FCC doesn't do anything. They don't monitor. They don't go around with bands and detect people. They do monitoring on like commercial services and FM broadcast stations, but not on, ham radio, CB radio, FRS and such. But they do respond to like complaints, and especially if they're interference complaints. For example, big ones like Indianapolis police getting jammed by kids with Baofangs and that sort of thing. That's a life safety issue, and they'll go track those things down like in a heartbeat. But other things like guy messing with repeater, guy interfering with net, like they got a rap sheet, but it's pretty low on the totem pole.
Mm-hmm.
It's not until there's lots and lots, like it piles up high enough that it's like, all right, we'll go take care of this guy. There's a really famous like YouTube documentary on a C beer from Detroit, really famous, quote unquote, but it's pretty prolific in the CB world. He was a big time CBer. Everyone loved him. He was a real nice guy, but he was causing interference to his like neighbor's house through the speakers and through his own radio and TV, because he had a 10,000 watt radio and an antenna bigger than his house on the roof. And he got shut down because his neighbors were tired of the noise, and it was sad for like the community, because it was like kind of a healthy community, but obviously illegal. But they did do that enforcement. That was a long time ago. And since then, we just get these piecemeal like enforcement here, enforcement there. And then you also have, we mentioned earlier, the official observer, which is now the volunteer monitoring program that ARRL does. And they mostly give out, I think, good reports, like reports of good audio, or like you need to fix your amp, you're overdriven, this and that. But they also will detect and complain to the FCC and ARRL about those interference problems. But from what I've heard, there's just not much reply. They put them in a pile somewhere and then forget about it, right? So I wouldn't mind paying this $50 either. Like, I'm pretty happy. I was pretty surprised that ham radio is free compared to like GMRS, and actually getting a station license for a business is pretty expensive, but that's commercial.
Yeah.
Or low power FM, if you wanted to do like a non-commercial, like fun radio station, that's crazy expensive. But ham radio is totally free, and bringing it up to that speed isn't too bad. But going back to the youth thing, I'm a big youth advocate, and it's going to block a lot of young people. And so if this actually gets passed, and because I'm sure the ARRLs, they're putting up their the stop sign and saying, hey, we need to compromise, and hopefully somebody out there is listening to like some of these ideas of like, what if the FCC can give us graduated fee schedules or concessions for young people. But if in the case they don't move, which I'm sure they won't, I would really expect to see these foundation programs like YASME and ARRL Foundation and NCDXF and even ICOM or Flex Radio giving out grants for getting your ham radio license, because that's their bottom line. If you get
right.
I can see like giving out grants like that a lot, especially that amateur radio digital communications. They sold the IP block and got a whole bunch of money. They could afford a lot of ham radio licenses, but I don't know. That's just a couple of cents there.
I think when you were talking, I thought about something. I thought, maybe they should give everyone a free license for the first 10 years, and then charge a $50 for every renewal after that. Because if a 9-year-old kid gets a license today, then he's not going to have to renew until he's 19.
And he's got a job by then.
And he's got a job by then.
My kids can't have a job.
They don't want the money 10 years from now, though. They want it now.
Well, but they've got a lot. They've got 750 some odd thousand people who are licensed now and will be renewing this year and next year and the
a tenth of them will.
Well, it's not that evenly split, but yeah, I mean,
no,
it's just
theoretically.
Theoretically, it's one of those things where it's a compromise, and this is a proposal that the ARRL is going to fight against. And maybe they'll win, maybe they won't win. But if a compromise were to be put in place, I think the younger people and the new ham should be the ones to benefit from that compromise. Is what I'm trying to say.
I don't even have an issue with the new ham who's an adult who at least should have a job.
Yeah.
Paying for that license. I mean, my thing, and obviously I'm very jaded because I teach school and I teach this in school. It's just a 12-year-old can't have a job legally in the United States. So the whole he should, if it's worth him getting the license. That's what this guy in my comments is sitting there saying. If it's worthwhile, he'll go out and get a job and do it. Now legally he can't. And so give me something to get these kids licensed the first time. Like you said, the renewal 10 years down the road, they've got a job.
Yeah.
16 and under. 16 and under. Free.
Yeah. Parents having to explain, or the kid having to explain to the parents. I know a lot of youngsters who struggle to get radio equipment from their parents because their parents have no idea the merit of this hobby, the technical merit, the career implications, and that sort of thing.
I mean, I've got kids whose parents struggle to pay for their lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how am I going to tell them this $50 thing it's going to pay off in the long run.
A lot of it goes into like kids sports too. You know, they got to pay $100 for the uniform. They got to pay $80 for this. It's just, and
a lot of schools
I mean, it
don't
starts
do
at,
that, though.
out here. It's everywhere. I mean, there's fundraisers, car washes. I mean, you go door to door and sell, cards to get discounts at areas. I mean, there's tons of stuff, but I still think like what you're saying, like kids, you know, just like hunting, 16 and under is free. Everyone else pay your 15, 25. I mean, 25 is a good one. I think 50 is a little steep, but
the thing I
think
worry
they
about
also
too
need-
is that. Sorry, Craig.
So real quick, I think they also need to take also into account you have a lot of elderly on fixed incomes. I know someone may come in like, oh my God, you have 3 7300s. Why do you need a break? It's like, well, some of these guys, maybe their son bought the radio for them. Some of these people, the elderly, I think after a certain age, I mean, we already take away their driver's licenses. Might as well give them a free, I think after like 70, 75, I don't know, just an arbitrary number. They shouldn't have to pay either because a lot of them are on fixed incomes.
Totally agree.
Just like when they go to, you get your park pass to go around the country in national parks.
There you go.
Know,
That's
or
free.
on the back senior citizen, done.
The thing I worry
And
about
veterans always free, damn it.
Yeah.
We look
And
at
veterans should be.
Yeah.
Here in Australia, we look at you guys in the US and we think you guys are doing it right. Because, I mean, look at the chart that Jason showed before. Your numbers are going up. And the thing I worry about is that bringing in this $50 fee, that it's either going to plateau or at worst it'll start to go down again.
I can tell you from my experience with kids, it will go down. So
Yeah.
I mean, it may not go down as much with an adult population, but getting kids licensed, like all the people have fundraisers and stuff. School accounting is a hot mess. That's why we had to do my fundraising thing on YouTube the other day, because by golly, I'm not allowed to have a fundraiser that's actually tied to school. And
Ham radio as a hobby struggles to keep up with, kids with mobile phones and computers, let alone having to pay for something that they could be interested in and learn from.
Right.
So.
I just, I would not feel that. What's the best way to say that? I wouldn't feel very much compassion for a kid with a brand new iPhone who's complaining about a $50 ham radio license, but that's me. So.
Well, I can see that.
No, I totally get what you're coming from, Steve, and I agree with you. 98% of what you're saying I agree with. So I think there needs to be some sort of concession for either young people under and over a certain age, or like I said, just people who get a technician license. Like they haven't had a fee structure for the longest time, and they want to propose this new thing, and that's fine, but do it in, just do upgrades or renewals and upgrades. That's it. Just do renewals and upgrades, and don't do the technician, don't do the new ham, don't do this, or don't do people under like the age of, I'd say under the age of 21, actually. Under the age of 21 and over the age of 65, don't charge them anything. So that'd be my vote. But, I think we're going to probably either this is going to get totally squashed because the ARRL really steps up and puts the kibosh on it, or we're going to see some sort of compromise. I don't think it'll pass the way it is written right now. But I guess time will tell. So.
And you can put your comments in. The ARRL page has a link to the FCC's electronic comment filing system, and it's a little clunky, as you'd probably expect.
That's what your $50 is going towards.
Yeah, but they give you the guidance on how to associate your comments with this proposed rulemaking.
Right.
And give your feedback. Let them know what you think. They don't necessarily consider and read every word of those things, but the quantity of feedback is important, and the nature of the feedback in generally opposing or supporting the fees, it adds up. So so submit your stuff.
It's kind of like voting. You don't really get to complain if you didn't take any effort to.
That's right.
Right.
A lot of us youth clubs are trying to come up with a template, because another thing that really helps with like petitioning and stuff is a single kind of thought or campaign or what have you, right? Because if you have 1,000 comments and there are 1,000 different paragraphs, it's hard to read. But if you have like a single mission or a single like line of thought saying like we want these, like we have these demands and these things, then you can like understand how many people are behind a certain
right.
So
I
would hope the ARRL does something like that too, where
Yeah.
it makes it easy to like, here's some of the points to support the ARRL's position, and then you can submit those and then get your stuff too.
Agreed.
Right, and they're supposed to adjudicate all those, you know, those questions or comments or arguments against in their final decision, and if they don't, then you have the opportunity to potentially file a lawsuit. And that's where, you know, those comments come in to be valuable. And if you don't put in any comment, if the ARRL, for example, doesn't put in a comment, they don't have the opportunity to sue later to push against this.
Yeah, true.
A good takeaway from this would be to join the ARRL, support them.
Yep.
They are our only defense. Whether you agree with them or not, that's what we got.
Right.
So
You may not like all of their policies, but that's the biggest and pretty much
their
the
main
only policy
policy is
out there.
protecting amateur radio.
Right.
So that's all that really
Right.
matters. So.
Right. You don't
And
have
on that,
to.
boys, I gotta take off. It's getting late. And
Yeah,
I gotta-
we're about to shut this down. So you don't have to like everything the ARRL does to support them. And in fact, if you do support them, you have a bigger voice to point out the flaws that they do have by saying, I support them, but I think they did this thing wrong. So that's my stance on that. Okay, guys, we're going to shut it down. Hey, thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. This has been a great discussion. I think we'll probably do this again next month, because between now and then, we'll probably find out some more information about this whole proposal thing. So everyone watching, once again, subscribe to all the channels that are linked in the description below. Please comment. This video will be posted to QRZ, so I'll be really interested to see the comments there. I'm really looking forward to that. I am so looking forward to that. So 73 to everybody. Put your comments below. Let us know what you think. If there's a topic that you would like to see us discuss as a group in an upcoming episode, tell us that too. Everyone wave goodbye. Be socially distanced.
Goodbye.
7-3, guys.
Everybody.